Just before the holidays, I headed to Astoria, Queens to meet up with personal trainer John Salutare at his home studio so John could experience a dual bell workout.
All right, let's do it. All right, start with the squat. We're going to demo looking out and looking in so you can see the example of how it would flow. All right. For those tuning in, always make sure you check your foot placement. Make sure your feet are placed and facing the right direction. If you are someone that likes to have them pointed out slightly, make sure both feet look exactly the same. I highly recommend you keep your feet parallel and pointed straight below you because that way you'll get more, again, stabilization and more force and focus on your knees and strengthen those MCA ACLs. And yeah, so now I'm sitting here and I'm really actively concentrating on not having this move too much in order to do that back to what I said about form first, right? Because if I went it too fast, if I'm not paying attention, you can see what happens with that. Very cool.
How does that instability feel?
It's nice, especially with squats too, because squat already presents that challenge of where to distribute your weight and how to balance your weight. A lot of times people, they don't take a lot of the back end, a lot of this smaller, mental game into the account. And what I can tell you is people just go up and they're just gonna start squatting, they're not paying attention to their core focus, they're not engaged. Biggest thing too is one of the biggest things you really want to pay attention to is your foot placement on the floor and where you're distributing weight into your foot. The foot tripod. Emily Epstein told me that a while back with Barefoot Trainer, thank you. Met together. Me and Glenn met years ago. You never know where your connections are going to take you. Right. Years ago, just a workshop, and here we are a decade later,
at least,
finally working together. So stay in touch with people that you connect with. And there was a perfect example of me not going ahead and taking into account of really measuring into the little mile line. So you always want to make sure you're nice and even. So that's another part too, when you get to the top and you finish with your glutes, that is going to cause you a bit of a sway, which is going to allow you to go ahead and use those stabilization muscles back to making sure that we're not moving throughout the squat.
Do you feel the movement of the weights on the bar?
I feel a slight sway going back and forth, but it feels like it's working for me to help the actual exercise. Next up, we're going to go ahead and shoot some shoulder press, some traditional and some military for those of you that like to play with that. I'm especially going to start with the alternating in terms of front shoulder press and military press because there, no matter how stoic, how much you control your movement, the sway is definitely going to come into play. So that's a little technical. Okay. We're going to play a staggered stance. For those that are watching, you want to learn a little bit while you learn it. Okay. Assessment. Definitely having to pay more attention to the push and keeping what I like to say a straight line. Because as soon as you vary from that line any degree, you are feeling that stabilization. Which for shoulders is especially helpful because there are three heads of the shoulder. For those of you that are watching, go ahead and learn. Right, front, middle, back. So the sway is forcing you to incorporate all of the heads of your shoulder, of your delt, that you might not usually do if you just staying with the one thing you're always with, because you will go ahead and stay in the same repetition that you either learned or just do. You're always going to hit pretty much the same angles with your shoulder. This is going to force you to adjust those angles and therefore involve more muscle fiber, which then what? Exactly. Give you more muscle, give you more definition, get stronger. See?
I've not seen anybody do that exercise yet, and what impressed me about that certainly had a lot to do with your form, but the fact that you're moving it back and forth as well as up and down, and the stability at which the weights were, really for the most part not moving at all.
Right.
That was impressive.
Which is also another good thing to say is how well that this is manufactured, because the balance is there. It's not something where you're going to go ahead and it's going to be weighing a little bit more to the front, or a little more to the back, and you're going to get disappointed. This is a nice even distribution of the weight, which is, especially with this, where these are filled, so they're not exactly solid. One might be a little bit less than the other, and still it's fine to balance. So good to hear for that stuff. Okay, let's demo a deadlift. Okay, deadlift assessment. Definitely noticing the sway on this one more than the other exercises, which makes a lot of sense because there's more movement with my arms, where if it's on my back, it's just staying on one unit. Now I have two apparatuses holding one apparatus, and therefore allowing for that. Plus, when you're doing a deadlift, you have to go through the shape of your body to clear your knees. So again, any movement forward or backward is going to cause that actual sway that we want from the Dualbell. So really helpful, especially with deadlift, because deadlift is used to go ahead and mimic things you're going to use in life. You probably use a deadlift exercise more than you will a squat, because how often do you have something on your back and then standing up, other than getting up and getting down, which you normally. But we do tend to pick things up from the ground a lot, right? And very rarely we pay attention to our form. So, groceries, children, all those things, pets, that move around when you pick them up. A lot of stabilization stuff, that's the number one people that tend to hurt their backs. This is going to help you a lot with that. Okay, time to try out the Dualbells on a bent over row. Coaching points, good anatomical form, a nice natural back. Like that, just anything on your hand grip. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so that really hits the spot in a nice way. The Dualbell sway, the overhand row didn't have as much movement because, again, back to it, not moving as much forward and back, not needing that to clear or trace the body form as much. The underhand row did have that sway, and especially for me who's down, dealing with a little bit of a shoulder impingement issue, it's very nice to have that focus on the minutia muscles to really make sure. And one thing Glenn mentioned to me was when you have to go ahead and try and keep the sway out of the game, it forces you to do the exercise that much more focused, with that much more attention to detail and that much more attention to form. Which we start going back to the beginning, you're getting that much more out of the exercise. 2 thumbs up. We like that one a lot. Okay, one important assessment that I would like to point out, and something that I coach in my versatile training approach, is how to really make working out and exercising applicable to life. You want to be natural to what you want to do. Unless you're specifically trained to be an athlete or a fitness or physique performance athlete, unless you have something that you're actually trying to accomplish, if you're exercising for health and fitness, especially mind-body health, you want to make it most authentic to your living, right? Things you're going to do in your day-to-day, right? You don't want to go ahead and just see something you saw on one of these influencers and be like, oh, I want to try that, because you're probably not ready to do that, because otherwise you're going to get hurt. You want to start with the simple, the basics. There's a reason that traditional lifts are still around. They were invented forever ago, and they're still a core part of almost any training program, no matter how advanced, no matter how crazy anybody's doing anything online. No matter how many of these that you might see, as great as this extra edition is, it all starts with the basics. What makes this so invaluable is that it's taking the basic exercise, the core exercise that they've been doing since Olympian times, and allowing you to have just a little bit of a twist to it. That's going to go ahead and just really get you so much more out of those exercises. So the key point to take away is you get to do traditional exercises, you get to enhance your mind-body connection, which is a huge, huge thing to pay attention to, and you have no choice but to pay attention to it when you're doing with this, because it forces that form focus. So get on it. Let's get into a nice bench. All right, measure out our hands, pay attention to our bench form. Some of that before your feet on the floor. Let's say you add tempo to your exercise. I'm doing a nice 1, 2, 3 form, but let's say we add some tempo. That's when you're really going to start to feel a nice sway come into play. Yeah, so if you're going ahead and doing the paying attention to the form, you won't feel the sway as much, but again, that's the sway playing into the game and doing what you want it to do. You want to go ahead and try and avoid it as much as possible, so that way you can go ahead and really use those stabilization muscles to go ahead and get into the game. When I went into the tempo rates, then you really starting to feel that focus, because now you're doing a lot with your nervous system all at once. Okay, so we've added the extenders, and now we've added another 10 pounds to our bench, which is beautiful. One thing I'd also like to mention is, being someone that's dealing with some shoulder and, let's say, clavicle area issues, my bench is in the toilet right now. I'm not happy with it. So to be able to do this and really get back to the basics and paying attention to the form that I'm using is extremely valuable, very valuable. And I do really feel, again, the connectivity tissue working more than you would normally feel when you're just pushing heavy weight. For those that don't know, your body recruits from big to small. So the heavier the weight, the bigger the muscles you're going to use. The lighter the weights, the smaller muscles actually get to play in the game. Perfect example of that is a push-up. Whatever your bench is, when you do that for whatever reps you are, when you go to do a push-up, the weight's probably similar, but feels different, right? It feels a little harder. It feels like it hurts a little bit more. That's why. All right, let's see what we got. Okay. One thing I will say is the benefit of having the Dualbell there is the weight distribution, especially when we're doing this. Now, instead of the weight, even with the standard plate, right? It's not as wide of a field. With the weight, the way this is now, with the Dualbell putting both plates, let's say, for lack of a better term, the weight apparatus is on the front and on the back of the bar, you're getting what I can best describe as a fuller feel on your chest. So instead of having it just kind of be isolated on the bar area, it's expanding the circumference of the muscle that's feeling the weight upon it, which is really good. So we thought it'd be good to go ahead and demonstrate how easily they come on and off to set up your exercises. especially if you're going to use dumbbells, because you don't have to worry about putting plates on or off. You're going to pick them up, grab it, slide it on. Very easy, as such. All right, we're going to do this.
It doesn't take any extra time.
Not at all.
Yeah, versus putting plates on.
Exactly.
Lay it open in our hands. Circle it around the dumbbell handle. Lift up the bar and slide it right on.
And boom, voila. Yup. All right, now I'm going to try and make it not move. Let's see. Yeah. So the only way you do that is do what's called tempo training. When you just do the traditional stationary dumbbell, you're not going to get that. You know, especially typically you end up doing some of this to get heavier, whereas this you can stay with the weight you can actually handle and get good range of motion and a healthy movement for something that eventually might end up hurting, unless you're doing it on purpose for a training. Now again, very, very helpful and beneficial to this is the fullness you're going to get out of that bicep curl. When you go ahead and just rack them out, typically you're trying to hit a rep range, right? 10 reps, 15 reps, 8 reps. No matter what rep you're trying to hit with this, you can't speed through it. If you do, even if you do, you're still getting that extra sway, so the muscle fiber is having no choice but to stay that much more enacted and have that much more weight and force upon it. One thing it really highlights is any imbalances you may have within any part of your body, especially when you're doing a dual-handed exercise such as this. If you have any kind of injuries, if you have one side typically stronger than the other, our dominant side, our dominant hand side is typically a little bit stronger because we use it for more things. The Dualbell is going to highlight that. It's going to really force you to make sure both are playing evenly, which is a huge benefit because you don't want to be imbalanced in any way, shape, or form in your life. Not mentally, but physically, definitely not physically, right? So, one thing to really bring it home. And then we're going to go ahead and get some triceps in our game. Okay. For those of you that are doing this, if you don't feel comfortable lifting it that way, go ahead and do a front squat and then lie into your position. Yeah, we're going to have to take this one nice and slow. If we go too fast, the good thing about it though is even when they spin, they're staying balanced. Which again goes back to the manufacturing, how well they were made. Yeah, we're gonna get some tricep out of that. Yep. A lot like the bicep. Really having to focus on the form itself, the engagement of the actual muscle, to make sure you're hitting all the aspects, all the heads of your tricep. You get a lot fuller finish out of that range in that exercise. So if you start to finish, for me, what was really nice about this is it was tying back into when I first got into exercising at home, when I was just picking up my dad's exercises that he'd have around, or different pieces of equipment he might have found similar to this. And I remember one was like an ab roller he was using, right? This is similar to those products where you see something that has the new take on doing something that's already there. And for me, it was refreshing. And again, I've been exercising for a long time. I've been doing advanced lifts for a very long time. And just like anyone else, you get into your repetitions, you get into your habits of what you know works for you, what you like to do, and etc. And you don't, as much as I change up my programming, I don't always change it up quite as much as I think I do. Whereas just now with using this, it felt different, right? Like I said, when we mentioned one of them, I felt fuller for like the chest exercise. The plate, where you feel it on your body, versus with the Dualbell with the thicker weight distribution, you can tell the difference. And again, you feel more muscle involvement, which for me, the really biggest thing is it just felt like a healthier lift. It didn't feel like, obviously you won't be able to do as much as you would do with other exercises, with the traditional plates, just because of the natural science of how things lay out. You need to go ahead and take into account what you're going to have to compensate for with the stabilization muscles playing. The stabilization muscles, again, don't get a chance to play as often. So when they do get in the game, you're kind of babying a little bit when you're not really knowing how they're going to respond, which is a great reason why to bring this up. You probably cut you out some of your other exercises too. You may not need to do quite as many band exercises for your shoulders because your stabilization muscles are going to get that work through using the Dualbell.
Where do you think this would, or how do you think this can benefit the person who just has a couple of dumbbells at home and not much else?
If you're in an urban setting like us here in New York or anywhere, if you have a smaller apartment, smaller living situation, your exercise area, you just don't have the place to go ahead and store a lot more exercise equipment, but you do want to advance your at-home gym. This is as big as they are, literally. The size of one of those bagels you should eat it after your workout. But it goes ahead and takes up this much space, and now from this you can add on however much more weight you have available to you in your dumbbell setup. So one thing that I would say as a trainer, specifically, I train a lot virtually. One of my clients lives in 2 places, and so he has stocked up his at-home gym at one of his homes, and we have ran into that exact issue we were just talking about, where he's gotten so strong that he can't lift much more weight. He doesn't have that much more weight available. Also, he doesn't quite have a rack setup, so like for example, squats, we only can really work with what he can pick up and lift and get over his head. Now, no matter how strong you get him, that's also, your legs should always be stronger than your upper body. So how is that going to work out? Specifically deadlift, right? He has the weights, we just don't have a way of putting all the weight onto the bar in the way that it does. And now we do. So it's going to be hugely helpful for me with that. But also, I'm a very big advocate of the mind-body connection. I've said that through almost every video here. And this forces you to keep that in mind. Typically what I've noticed as a trainer in all my years, and even before I went really into the spiritual route of the training apparatus, or the platform approach, I would say that people just show up and start doing things. They just show up and start lifting, they don't pay much attention to their form. The perfect example is the person that's sitting there doing a curl, maybe looking at their phone or something like that. That's not what you're there for. If you're gonna be on your phone, be on your phone. If you're at the gym, be at the gym. Using these, you won't be able to do that, right? If you're doing on the phone and it's gonna be like one of these, right? Which is really good because it makes you be present, it makes you be mindful, and it makes you really pay attention to that mind-body connection, which is the most important thing. Because establishing that, the results and the effectiveness of every exercise, every rep is just very much enhanced. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to go ahead and get in on this and seeing it as it's taking off. It's fun to see a new product. You see a lot of stuff in this day and age where people are doing things, and the motivations might not always be authentic. Glenn's definitely is, and for something that seemingly is so simple, you get amazing results out of it. So it's been a lot of fun to play with it. I'm looking forward to getting a full workout in myself with these and reporting back.
Thanks, John.
Thanks again.